Okay, welcome back to the LXB Morning Flight. I'm super excited. I enjoyed about this particular segment. Now, something has been all over the world that has happened from several countries in the world, and this is social media regulation. We're seeing how governments of different nations of the world have come up to say, look, we are going to regulate this means of communication, as there have been several, whether positive or negative impacts as a result of social media. So today we want to talk about social media regulation in Nigeria and maybe the world at large. And we have someone really special in the studio. You know what we do on the LSP Morning Flight? We always give you the A-liners just to discuss, dissect, and analyze any issue that we bring to the fore. And with that, allow me to introduce you to our guest of the day, Arinze Emmanuels, and he is here in the studio. Welcome, sir.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to a new month. We're seeing you in the second half of the year.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Welcome, good to have you here. Now, like I rightly said when I started, the word social media regulation has become, in quote, on the lips of every single person and every government of several nations of the world. When we talk social media regulation, what exactly, let's even start from the basics, is social media regulation?
Well, thank you for that. That's when government tries to come up with laws or regulations to control the activities either of the people, citizens in social media, or to control the social media operators itself or themselves. So that's what it's all about. Okay. So either to curtail the excesses or to, in some instances, to impose on them what they shouldn't impose on them. So basically, that's what it's all about.
Curtail their excesses.
Yeah.
Now that you use that word, how will social media regulation then affect its users? Because people are using social media to do whatever it is they want, either to communicate to people, put up pictures, express themselves. But now when the government has a right or intends to curtail so-called excesses of the users, how then does this regulation affect the users?
The users or the, actually said the operators. Okay. Yeah, you know, something I want to bring to perspective, first of all, is when we say control, it's actually from two ways. Because the biggest problem with social media is actually monopoly. Mm. Yeah, that's a big problem because, and when you hear deep state, it's important we look at several variables in this thing. When I say monopoly, you've had the big players, the Facebooks of this world, the Twitters of this world, the Instagrams and WhatsApp and all of that. These people, they've gained a lot of powers. And that's because of both those who are at the back of them and what they've built over the years. They're private organizations, of course. But because of their powers, they've also been able to successfully stifle that space such that they are the major operators. So when you talk about excess, that's an excess in itself. Mm. Because the smaller, when you talk of expression, it should be free. It's a free world. It should be free. Everybody should express themselves, set up whatever business they want to set up. But now you set up this, you're dominating the space, and because of your larger-than-life status in the space, whatever tends to compete against you, you ensure you beat it down and kill it. Mm. And so by that, you're taking a position that is even threatening to national government. So that's an excess on one side, and that's very dangerous. And then, from government point of view perspective, every government wants to run their policies, whether it's selfish or selfless, whether it's patriotic or whether it's for their self-interest. They want to run their policies, and every government is afraid of people expressing themselves freely. But this is a free world, and many nations style democracy, where they operate or not, it's a different thing. But when the government tries to clamp down on either the operators or the citizens from the use of social media, it's a problem. But then you have to balance the two sides and then be able to tell everything must have a balance. Everything must have a balance. There must be a way to regulate and control social media operations and operators, particularly when I talk about monopoly. It shouldn't be so. But also, every citizen must also be alert to tell when the government is trying to be autocratic and then be able to say, no, this is not what our constitution stands for.
Okay, sir, you're a lawyer, you're a seasoned lawyer, and I know you know about our fundamental human rights, and which you just stated. the fact that people have the rights to express themselves, and it's the excesses that these regulators or these regulations aim to curtail. Who defines the excesses? Who says the expression is excessive? What is excessive? I know you talked about national security now, but in a place where even the social media itself, a president has been taken off a social media platform. A whole president of a world power country.
Two presidents.
Two, actually, yeah. Two.
The one refused to be taken off.
But one took
Reacted.
back very seriously. And so on both sides, actually, because you just said something about balance, from the regulators, who says, because now, I'm talking from the point of my man of God, he had said before now that there will come a time when just saying God will be hate speech, just saying Bible will be hate speech. Are we in that time?
We are, and then we're close. In some places we are, in some places we're close. But you see, the world is the world. Even before the end times, the government will always sort of control free speeches because of what it does against the authority in power at the time. You know, so when you look at the excesses, and I talked about when you say who defines the excesses. First of all, every constitution you have there are provisos that deals with exceptions to every rule. Okay. Most rules have exceptions. So the fact that you have a right to life doesn't mean you have to take my life to be able to keep your own life. That's an exception in itself. The fact that you have freedom of expression doesn't mean that you will begin to say things that will stop insurrection. There are things that, you know, there are excesses, and there are, so the Constitution defines what excesses are. In most cases, yes. And that's what people need to know. What has the law said about this that I'm doing? Yes. You know, so, but for the most part, it's easier for government to say this is what it is because they're in power. But that's why every citizen must be informed to be able to tell this is not right. There was a time that we say people should read the Constitution, know what it's all about. Yeah. You know, so they know the content, so they'll be able to know when the government is. And then when we talk about, so when you observe the excesses, if the government is being excessive in their overbearing their regulations, then the people need to rise up in legal ways, advocacy, civil disobediences, things like that, to get the government to understand that while you're in power, we also are a people that sent you and put you in power, so you have to represent our interests. Now, to your question, whether we are at the time, yes, we are. We indeed are, and. You know that even when the Antichrist begins to reign in the world, not everyone will agree to his government. He will have opponents and oppositions here, and he will have. And so even if this is the time, and you can't stop it because the scripture talks about this thing, it's going to happen. But it doesn't mean that we'll just flow along. No, there'll be massive opposition, and there's serious opposition to that. And we also need to, there's a thin line, because I know you want to talk about Nigeria's social media issue, but there's a thin line. Maybe I should let you ask a question first before we get into that.
Because, sir, one thing I've also found out is that you know, some of these platforms are like avenues for which hate speech and other things grew. We also hear cases like in Africa. Also, we had the case where in Rwanda, it was the radio that was given. It was like the platform was given for over 100 days, and that's why we saw the Tutsi and the Hutus go against them. And over 1 million persons died in 100 because the platform was given was a radio at the time. And now, the government of this day, the present government, came into power through the social media, because one of the major platform that they used in ensuring that people were reached. How then do we create the right balance? Like, I know you've talked about it, but sir, I want us to know that the people have freedom of speech. But when is freedom of speech gone bad or gone sour? When do we get to do it? And how do we also create an understanding for the people that you do not cross this line? Because some persons on the social media, they also go because the platform, Twitter is there, I can just go and let me just be heard. But some of these social media platforms also have rules and policies. So you hear the people, the owners are saying that if you go against this rule, you'll be dropped. Like the case of the president, it was said that his speech was not was against the rules and regulation that they had. So how do we now get to create? Because you know that if you're on the platform, they have their own, like I said, monopoly is there. And what do we get to do to curtail these things, to help curtail them?
Okay, thank you very much. It's this is the world. I'm saying that for a reason. No matter what you do, because the world system is not perfect, set up by an imperfect being.
Yes.
So there are some things you cannot perfect. No matter how much you talk about fundamental human rights, we have since found out that it exists only as far as the leaders are willing to make it exist. Even in the God bless free America, we have seen that it really doesn't exist because it's the world. Pastor, man of God always talks about righteous judgment.
Yes.
So it's only God that will really let. What is hate speech? I mean, you just talked about the fact that a time will come when Jesus' Bible becomes a hate speech. So who defines it? These are people whose minds are dark, who don't know God, who are without God and without hope in this world, like the Bible tells us. But the Bible will let us know what is hate speech, because hate speech will be that which is against love. So a man without love can't tell you what a hate speech is, but that's what they have given their own definition.
Okay.
And that's so. When you talk about balance, I'm going to say it's the world. It's God. That's why the citizenry must be informed, educated, and then the church will have to keep doing what we have to do to get many people into salvation. Sorry, I'm saying this from talking about this because most of the world doesn't know. They walk by what they are told.
Okay.
Okay. Now, how do we? I think your question was, how do we curtail the excesses? I mean, like what you talk about in Rwanda, like
Yes,
the
sir.
genocide and all of that.
Yes, sir.